Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. So you probably noticed that lately I've been using Ableton drum bass a lot, and not only on drum grooves or grooves, but on almost every single track, until the point that I start to ask myself, does it really add something or am I just fooled by the loudness? So I decided to make a little experiment, and you will see that it's not as good as it seems. But before to start the experiment, you need to understand how I use drum bass. So let's get into Ableton. So most of the time I will use drum bass at the end of the chain, so I will have all of my effects including delay and reverb. I like to put them on the track in insert, and I will add drum bass at the end of the chain, mainly to add this final touch of loudness and to kind of sharpen the sound and make it a little bit less messy. So by default, drum bass itself is gonna add a bit of color, so this is something you need to be aware of. And I will usually start by activating the compressor, so with the kind of glue with the effect and everything. Obviously it makes things a bit louder, but one problem that is coming now is that my reverb has been as well brought up by the compressor, and I don't want that. So I found a quick way to solve this problem, and is using the transient parameter just right to it, and when you play it negatively, it's kind of acting as a gate, which will kind of shut down the tail of your reverb. Now you could tell me like, why don't I just reduce the amount of reverb and maybe the decay of the reverb as well to kind of reduce this? And you are right, it kind of does a similar job. You will see later that it's not exactly the same, but you definitely can do that. I found just transient to be faster because it more or less does the exact same job, except that transient is just like close to the compressor button, so it's easier to access. And the other thing is that if you modify the decay and the amount of your reverb, you might change the tone and feeling of your sound. So this device helped me like make things a little bit cleaner. Now I like to use as well drive. So drive would have a bit of distortion into the input. So I will usually go no more than 30%. Obviously it depends what you are looking for. You have different modes. Most of the time I will use soft, but if I'm working on the bassy sound, I will probably use hard, which adds some low frequency, and medium is great in between. And then I will use crunch. Crunch is gonna add some distortion in the mid-high frequency. So for me it's perfect to make you sound a little bit clearer, louder. I feel it's also more intelligible and somehow make it sound a bit more modern. Now what can happen with crunch is sometimes with higher sound it can add some extra harmonics and unpresent frequency in the very high frequency, and you can damp there, so reduce this very harsh frequency like kind of a low pass filter with damp. So this is to adjust depending on your taste and the situation. And yeah, finally I will adjust the trim level depending on how much I want my signal to be squashed. Trim is basically your input level, so the more you put, the more it's gonna squash everything. Sometimes sound, I found they sound better if they are squashed and super loud. This is really again a case by case. Sometimes I will be a bit more gentle, but most of the time when I use drum bass it's just to make things super loud and squash everything. Now speaking of loudness, maybe all of this is just kind of fooling me because it adds a lot of harmonics, a lot of loudness, passive loudness, but does it really make it sound better? Does it really help me? So I made a little experiment here where I will have the same patch basically with two different versions. So I will have the original with the drum bass, which sound like this. I will have one version where I remove the drum bass and I just crank up the gain to see if at the similar level is the same or not. You can hear there is way much more reverb and it's messier than with the drum bass. With the drum bass it's sharp, tight. And then finally I make a version to see if transient is really working well or not. So here I've left the drum bass, but I switched the transient to 0 and I try to adjust the decay of the reverb and the amount to make it kind of match the original with drum bass. So we got something like this compared to the version with the drum bass. So I still feel like the transient really kind of cut down a little bit and really makes things clearer in the way that the reverb cannot really. Now I reckon it's a very small difference, and you might tell me like in the mix with everything you don't really gonna hear the difference, which is true, but also keep in mind that a lot of small little changes are usually what's gonna make you mix better and not like just one big changes. So I get you are a bit lost now, but welcome to music production. And now I've done a similar experiment with crunch to see if really crunch adds something, and you have the original here, and I try to remove the post crunch and like add gain on post of the drum bass. So here there is quite a difference because obviously the crunch gonna just add some distortion in the mid-high frequency, so it's gonna make it brighter and less focus on the bass, so you have a bit more bass here. And I try to do the same as well with cranking up the input instead of the crunch. So again, this one a bit more bassy, a bit less defined, a bit less precise I found, rather than this one. You could hear that it will not take that much space in the mix compared, for example, to these two, which might take a bit more space. But again, I reckon the difference is not huge. But overall for me, it's just a perfect tool to add at the end of the chain. I can just click on compressor, it's glue everything. I bring down the transient to kind of clean up a little bit my signal. I will add a bit of drive and crunch to add some loudness and brightness to the sound, make it a bit more modern, a bit louder. But I feel like the final touch for your mixes, a little EQ and a drum bus is just what you need to clear your sound, make it sharp, tight, and therefore you're gonna leave space in the mix for other elements which gonna make your mix clearer. Alright, I hope you like this video. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and see you soon, guys. Bye bye.